Well, we've certainly had a bout of winter weather here where I live, and to me, winter weather means comfort food. And I thought the dolls might like to sit down to a nice, gooey, grilled cheese sandwich. So stay tuned and see how fun and easy these are to make. Alright, just like with a real sandwich, we need to start out with a couple of slices of bread. And this is my bread cane that I made on this channel several months ago. I will try to remember to put a link in the blog post for the instructions for the bread. If I forget, either bug me or just go check my channel and do a search, or even go to my blog and search it, because there's a search bar in my blog now, so you can go in and search for projects. Normally, when you first make a cane like this, you would have to freeze it for a while to slice it. This has been sitting in my office ever since last time we used it, so I don't need to freeze it this time. If you've just made yours, follow the directions in my other videos where we used it to freeze it for a while. We need 2 slices. Put this back in its little baggie so it's safe, and put it off to the side. Now, we are going to start out by making our bread look like it's been fried, because a grilled cheese sandwich has a wonderful brown ooziness, brown crusty on the outside, oozy cheese on the inside. We don't need as much texture as we would for some things, but we need some. So I've got a toothbrush. This is a toothbrush from Dollar Tree that is reserved for clay. And I'm just going to add some texture. Something for the chalk to grab onto. Now you'll notice when I cut it, I laid it out like this. These are the edges that were together before I cut. Your sandwich will look better that way. We're going to do all our texturing, then we're going to cut the bread and texture that, and then we'll add our cheese. Our cheese is going to be in 2 parts. I'm going to add just a little more texture, so I've got a wire brush. I'm going to pounce on there. How much you put on, how much texture you use is up to you. Now, I have my chalks. They're too big to go under the camera. And I have a Dollar Tree eyeshadow brush. I'm going to start out like I always, I'm going to start out with a slightly lighter yellow. Start out with this yellow. And I'm going to put a pile of chalk over here on the corner on the edge, but I'm going to have to wipe that off before I start working on the next step after this. So I am going to brush this over the entire surface of our bread. Remember, the edges of our bread are already done. And because we've been pouncing on this with our toothbrush and our wire brush, this is slightly attached to our work tile. I work on a ceramic tile. If you haven't followed my videos before, this eyeshadow brush is getting to the point where it's shedding. Alright, so now we're a little golden. Now I'm going to take just a little yellow ochre. This is the color I usually start with, but I want a slightly lighter yellow on there. We're building up color in layers. Now, I want kind of a reddish brown. This is kind of very much a reddish brown, brick red you might call it. It's down with the browns in my chalks, not with the reds. Not much of this. And I'm pouncing into my, oh, you can't see that, and then I'm pouncing on my tile. It just warms everything up. Now, I am going to use a brown. I have a brown chalk. I'm going to scrape off just a little bit of that. Get just a tiny bit on my brush. Getting over in my red, so I've kind of mixed the brown and the red together. I'm going to do a different brown. I'm going to pull out this other brown here. And this set of chalks is just from Michael's. It's their store brand Artist Loft art chalks. They're sold over by the artist supplies. I just want just a tiny bit around the edge, because you know how when you're making grilled cheese, this one I do, usually the edges of the bread get just a little more dark. And we're going to go over this all with more of the lightest yellow that we used to kind of blend everything. I'm going off the bread and on again, so I just get barely the edge. Now, that lightest yellow, I'll put a pool of that here where you can see it better. It's really a buttery yellow color. Now we're going to go back over. I know we started with this color, but we're going to end with it too. That blends our colors kind of together. All right, now the brush will need to be washed, and my chalk off to the side. And I'm going to use a wet wipe. Just a regular old wet wipe, and I'm going to clean every bit of loose chalk off of my tray and off of my fingers, because I don't want chalk on my hands for the next step. Now, I'm going to use my clay blade. I'm going to flip one of these over, and I've got cornstarch in a little container. And another Dollar Tree makeup brush. This is a blush brush. I'm going to put some cornstarch. Just barely dust a little cornstarch there. That's so this won't stick together too badly, because what we need to do now, pop this piece off. We're going to put it here because we want to cut this. I'm going to cut diagonally. It depends on how your dolls like their sandwiches cut. I don't know, maybe they like theirs cut straight across or in fourths. I don't know. I always cut sandwiches this way. But because we did that, we now have them, they come apart easily. They would have stuck together a little bit if I had not put that baby powder or that cornstarch there. You can use baby powder also. Let's see if I can get, I've got junk on my dental pick now. You can either use a dental pick for this step, or you could use a straight sewing pin, the tip of it. Anything with a very sharp point on the end. And I'm going to just kind of tease the edge. I'm making little tiny circles, and what I'm doing is I'm bringing up the texture. I'm making a crumb texture on that edge. We've done this every time we've cut the bread for other projects too, because we don't want this to look like clay. We want it to look like bread, and bread has crumbs in it. When you cut it, you see a little texture. So I am going to turn the camera off, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the cut edges of all these. That's all we have to do now. So I'm going to texture the cut edges of these pieces, and then I'll be back. Alright, so that is now all textured, and I have these two are the ones I'm going to build the sandwich on and then put these on top. So now I have some kind of orangey yellow clay. This is going to be filler. We're not going to, our sandwich is not going to be completely filled. We're not really going to see much of this. See a little of it probably. But what I want to do is kind of cut it. I'll probably put this piece over it. Get it cut so it fits a little. If you made the cheddar cheese project with me a few months ago, you could use some of that clay if you have it left, or just whatever yellowish orange clay you have in your stash or that you can mix. And I want it slightly smaller than my bread. Sure, yep, that's gonna, do you want that? That'll be okay. Hopefully I'm not getting my head in the camera. I don't think I am. All right, now we're gonna leave that over there. We are going to mix some liquid clay. Now you can use TLS, translucent liquid Sculpey, but it's going to come out a little more dull. I'm going to use Kato liquid poly clay. I actually got this at Walmart, or not Walmart, at Hobby Lobby a few years ago, and it works really well. I'm going to start out a couple of different colors that I might want. We're going to mix a little bit of, and this is oil paint. We always use oil paint to mix with our liquid clay. I know I see people on YouTube that are putting that are actually putting acrylic paint in, and if you go to most of the clay manufacturers that make the liquid clay will tell you not to use acrylic paint. You should use oil paint. You can't use oil paint straight with raw clay, but you use it with your liquid clays. This has got a little bit of a gunk on the end of it. I haven't used this in a while, and it doesn't take much. What we are going to do is mix just a little bit of oil paint to make a grilled cheese color. I'm using toothpicks to pull it out so I don't get too much or contaminate my paints, because toothpicks are much cheaper. Okay, a lot more yellow. Let me put a little bit over here so I can. And I have coated the necks of these tubes with like petroleum jelly, like a Vaseline type product. So let's move just a little of that over here. That's a better color. I'm thinking I want a little yellow ochre to mix in here too. Tone that down just a little bit. And these are just really, really cheap oil paints from the craft store. A little more of this lemon yellow. We don't need a lot because it goes a long ways. I have a brush hair in mine. Is that going to be a good color? I think I want a little more of the red out. I think the yellow ochre may have been a mistake. You can tell I did not mix my colors up ahead of time to try it out. A little more yellow. That's a pretty good color. That'll work. Now, I'm going to make a little pool of the liquid polymer clay. I like the liquid Kato clay because it remains shiny, so it will look like the grilled cheese would. And it's a little more translucent than TLS. All right, now because we put cornstarch here, we need to put a little bit of this under our cheese, under the clay, so that this will all stay together. This is used both as our liquid, as our melty cheese, I guess we'll call it, and as a glue to make sure this all stays together. And this is one of the few times you're going to see me bake on a ceramic tile. When I use liquid clay, I almost always bake on a ceramic tile rather than a paper plate because it's easier to get off. I'm going to try and make sure I have all the edges coated. And little drips are good. Little drips are very good, in fact. Oops. This gets kind of messy. Let me use a toothpick to kind of hold this still. Come on, stay still. I'm going to make sure all of the outside edges of that piece of cheese, of that piece of orange clay, are covered. I really don't want, and you're going to get some on the bottom. All right. Kind of push down and get that out of your way. I'm going to try something a little different here. I'm going to try picking this up. Yeah, that's going to be a little easier. But this is messy. No matter what you do, it is messy. A wet wipe will clean it off your fingers pretty well, though. And this is very slidey. I'm having a lot of trouble keeping it still. All right, get your cheese where you want it. Put more up on top. So it will help glue everything together. We're going to have little runny drips, which is perfect. I actually made myself a grilled cheese sandwich for lunch today, so I'd have the idea of what it looked like fresh in my mind. Okay, move this back. And place that. I'm going to get a wet wipe, clean wet wipe, and wipe my fingers off. Now, get it lined up and kind of smush down. Now, what I like to do is wipe up as much of the oil paint that's here, not mixed into clay, as I can. I like to wipe that off. Throw away the toothpicks. And then I'm just going to bake this with that liquid clay on here, that I can just pop it off with a razor blade knife and get rid of it. So I'm going to go bake this at about 250 degrees for about 15 minutes to make sure it's all baked. When it gets baked and cooled, I'll come back and we'll look at this. All right, these are baked off and cooled. So now I'm going to take my clay knife and kind of pop them off. And look, cheese has run down. Oh, It's all bubbly on that side. I hope the camera's picking up the details. I will do my best to get good pictures. Sometimes it's kind of hard to get a really good picture. This one slid out a little bit, but it still looks really good. Oh, that is, cheese has come down. Yeah. Oh, those look, I am so happy with those. I hope you enjoyed this video. Oh, I was going to show you. Now use your clay knife or a scraper. And now the tile is good as new. Just wipe this up. Get a wet wipe and clean up the rest of that. And the tile is all clean for next time. So I hope you enjoyed our tutorial today. This was a lot of fun to do. Be sure and check the blog post for some photos. I'll list the colors of oil paint I used. And I will talk to you next time. Bye.